Hello, hello. Welcome back. You are listening to Ivy Unleashed. You are here with Brooke and Andrea, and we have a very special guest in the house.
Yes.
It's me.
We have Emily Field, the registered dietitian that I have just been waiting to fangirl over in the house.
Oh, you're so sweet.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So glad to have you here. Yes, like Andrea said, Emily Field is a registered dietitian and health coach with a master's in public health who encourages us all to eat more, ditch deprivation, and nonsense food rules.
Yes. And I know that you've all heard us talk about her a million times and asked you to follow her because whenever people want to know more about macros, I'm like, can you just follow Emily Field? Because
So sweet.
I love how you approach it in so many ways because you're just honest and real about how it doesn't have to be that complicated, which we love. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you do it, but you have the best visuals to kind of start this. Or if you're an expert at it, I'm sure it's always nice to kind of look at them. So thank you for what you've provided online for us because it's helped us as coaches to help people out a lot.
Yeah, a lot of my audience is coaches and other health coaches. So I want them to be able to use that content for their clients to, like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So yes, I think I'm a born teacher. So like this stuff like comes easy for me and it helps me teach my clients. So if it helps me teach my clients, it's probably going to help you teach yours.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah. And I want to know how you got in this space because I love talking to dietitians about your schooling and then you find a passion within food and yours is macros. So I'd love to hear kind of how you got here.
So, I mean, I always kind of knew I wanted to help people help themselves. So it was never the traditional, like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a PA, I'm going to be a pharmacist where you're really like, I'm fixing your problem and go forth and be well. It's more like I felt like nutrition and psychology specifically, those are the two I narrowed it down in college. I was like, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to do this because at the end of the day, you're helping someone help themselves and then they won't need me anymore, which is really what I wanted. I landed in nutrition. It was like fireworks. I was like, this is what I'm doing. Did all the hoops, graduated, did my internship. But when I was in my internship, which is a pretty rigorous situation, you're going to multiple sites to do 2-week rotations. And I shadowed multiple dietitians in St. Louis, Missouri, and none of them were doing anything that I liked. So it was like a very tough time for me in my early 20s to be like, this is the field that I want to do. I love everything about nutrition, but nobody's modeling what I want to be doing. So I extended my stay and went after my master's because I just wanted to delay the decision. And I eventually landed in wellness coaching, in telephonic health coaching. And that's where Andrea and I go back to. And I learned that health behavior change was really powerful. It was like marrying this nutrition and my public health degree. And I was like loving it, making like laser coaching health like changes with people. And I loved it. And so what I realized, like in those 15-minute conversations, 30-minute conversations we had with people all over the country, you had to be very succinct in what you were teaching them and help them like reduce their barriers and their challenges in that short amount of time. And it's very challenging. So you have to boil down to the most important things. And as a dietitian, the things that will knock out 99 problems is like having balanced blood sugar. So eating protein, fat, and carb together at every single meal helps 99 problems. Energy, likely weight loss, if you have a weight issue, fat loss, if you have more fat than you'd like. A lot of times, like from sleep issues, hangry, all of these problems can go away from simply protein, fat, and carb at every single meal. And then the next logical question when somebody masters that is how much protein, how much fat, and how much carb. And that's where macros comes in. So macros is literally just tying a number to that and asking someone to budget better and to look at your meal and say, I want to eat more of this. It's usually more, a little bit less of this. Manipulate your meals in order to have a better balance of all 3 macros. So that's how the practice was really born.
I think too, the best part of your mentality on food is that it doesn't have to be pretty. Like you joke about having ugly food.
Yeah. I'm not a food blogger.
Which makes me feel so much better. Right? As a single girl just cooking for myself, I'm like, this doesn't have to be pretty. I'm the only one that sees it. Right. I'm getting what I need in each meal. That's all that matters.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And you say, you don't have to have pancakes and sausage for breakfast. You can have a rice bowl and beans if that's what you like or whatever it may be.
Called a no rules breakfast.
I love that. I think that that's what people need. What's tough, and I can't wait to hear how you talk about this, is macros is a way to kind of have some numbers tied to things, or maybe a little bit more rules or things to follow, right? But also, I don't feel like you really follow rules. I think you let people have flexibility. So can you kind of touch on the flexibility versus the counting and how it may be rigid, but it can be flexible, and your approach on that?
Yeah, so I kind of liken it in the very simplest example to like bowling, and you're like throwing the bowling ball and there's no rails on that lane, but you simply put up some bumpers and you're going to have more likelihood to hit those pins. And that's what I feel like macros is for some people. They know how to eat healthy. Most of the people I'm talking about understand the difference between processed, packaged, and refined foods. And most of them know what whole, real foods are. And so when you start to tie numbers to it, then you're actually saying, well, how much of that whole, real food do I need? And what I also love about macros, and this is where the freedom kind of approach comes in, is there are no goods and bads on food. It is just food. And when you start tracking your food and tying it to numbers and seeing how that food would be broken down in your body to a protein, a fat, and a carb, the cookie is pretty similar to the pancake, which is pretty similar to the apple. And I know that can kind of scare people because it's like, oh, well, doesn't that mean I'm just going to be eating donuts and pizza all day? And no, that's not what's going to end up happening. And I usually let people fumble through the method. I give them numbers. We do our couple coaching calls, and I'm saying, I don't give them food lists. I don't give them yes and no's. I don't give them green light, red light, anything like that. I don't call them clean. I don't call it dirty, no organic. None of that stuff belongs in food. And when someone's coming to me, they have decades of food rules that we need to untangle. So macros can be a way, just to answer your question, just strip all of that away. And so it does feel extremely freeing. You have the choice to eat refined, processed, and packaged foods because it brings you joy. And you have the choice to eat whole, real foods. And in order for you to hit your macros, I guarantee you're probably going to be cooking more in the kitchen. I guarantee that you're going to be making more whole, real foods, less of the sauces, less of the oils, less of the things that we're always telling people to maybe like cut back on, and strategically threading in treats and sweets and restaurant foods, alcohol, things like that, because that's a normal diet. Like that's normal eating. So yeah, that, I guess, the method in and of itself does lend itself to be freeing on its own. And then there's like obviously coaching that goes along with it. So if somebody's really struggling with that and trying to be perfectionist and trying to hit those numbers, that's where working with a professional can be really, really helpful. Some people can get it without working with a professional. And that's why I love like all the free resources I have on my website and people who do this stuff like on their Instagram, like I do. Like you can pick it up and do it on your own, but having a coach in your corner can kind of help you with, if you're feeling a little bit foggy about, you know, goods and bads and yes and no's and stuff like that, because we come with a lot of food baggage by the time we're trying in this method probably.
Yeah.
Which I love because we've had a few people on about intuitive eating. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of our listeners are kind of new to intuitive eating and trying to get that approach just familiar with it and what this is a thing. And when you think of macro counting, you think of tracking everything and, you know, being anal about your food choices, and it can be overwhelming. And so exactly what you're saying, it doesn't have to be. There is no good and bad when it comes to food, and that's exactly what intuitive eating specialists say. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear your kind of take on the differences between intuitive eating, counting macros, benefits, how you feel about it.
I actually have an image of this on my Instagram that's like it's like a Venn diagram. It's like macro tracking is over here, intuitive eating is over here, and where they align are on the things that you're just saying. Like strong does not have a size, skinny does not have a size or has a look, like healthy does not have a look. You know, it's a method of eating. It's a framework for eating. Some people do really, really well with data and they want to achieve their goals in a like direct and effective way. So using macros might be the best method for them. And you're talking on this podcast all the time about pick the thing that works best for you. Mm-hmm. You're the guy that's like all about spreadsheets and you love to budget and you like love to track your runs and you love to like numbers like really speak to you. Maybe macro tracking is something that you would really like. That loosey goosey, like go at you as you want, like tune into your hunger and fullness cues may not work for you. And vice versa. You're not into numbers at all. Like, and it is super triggering and you're like, hey, like have a perfectionist mindset around this. It's maybe not the best method and maybe more intuitive eating is your method of choice. What I end up saying though, usually is you can't know how to intuitively eat a lot of times unless you know what it feels like to feel good. And a lot of people out there have never felt good ever. So sometimes like just spending some time, like 6, 8, 10 weeks of tracking your food and aiming for what it, like the fuel that it takes for you to operate your body. Because by the time you're an adult, by the time you're over 20, and definitely if you're a millennial, you have thought that 1,200 calories is what you need. You have thought that low carb is what you need. You thought that high fat is what you need. There is like exponential garbage floating around in your head about what you should be doing with your diet. So stripping all of that away and just focusing on eating enough to support your metabolism will change your world as far as like, oh, I didn't know that problem could go away if I just started to eat more. I didn't know that I didn't have to have these digestive issues. Like I didn't know that I had to live with low energy. And so I think what I say is like, try it my way, see how you feel. And then once you got that under your belt and you have a recalibrated understanding of how much food it takes to fuel you, then you can step into intuitive eating, which is, okay, I can rate on a scale of like, I don't feel as good as I used to when I was doing tracking, or I don't sleep as good as I used to when I was tracking my food. And if I track again, if I kind of dip into the method, I can see that I'm slacking on carbs. I can see that I'm slacking on protein, something like that. But you don't really know where to go if you're still kind of really battling a lot of your food rules and your deprivation sort of mindset around food.
Yes.
Right. You need that baseline to really have first to know, okay, how do I feel, to that comparison. And I love that you said that, because I talked to Andrew too after we've had our intuitive guests on about just kind of my symptoms. And I'm like, I don't know what my body is telling me, right? Like my gut brain axis is off, my hormones are off. And so they're not sending me the right hunger cues or different things that you're talking about. To your point, I don't know what it's like to feel well, or I haven't for a while. And it probably stems from a long before I started to not feel well, because I do have all this baggage, and a lot of people do, like you're saying. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Where do people start?
Yeah, that's a great question. It feels like so dumb, but it is just as simple as downloading an app to your phone and just not changing anything about what you eat and fumbling through it. It's going to feel like, I think a lot of people start with going to a website, downloading their macros, being like, yes, I'm going to do it. They upload it into the app, and then they like change everything about how they eat. They go from eating like cereal and yogurt for breakfast to like, I'm going to go to eggs and like oats and like all this stuff. Or maybe they're changing everything about their snacks or their dinners with their families. And like, that is a lot of things to change all at once. So what I usually tell people is find some macros and put them into an app, and don't change anything about your eats. Just fumble through tracking and get kind of an estimate of like where you're falling. At the end of the day, you're going to kind of start to see a total of your protein grams, your fat grams, and your carb grams. And you're going to start to compare that intake to the numbers that were prescribed to you from this website or from a dietitian or somewhere. And you're going to say, wow, I am really off on this one thing. And usually it's protein. Usually the number one thing for women to be working on is they're under eating protein. And just by working on that one macro, this is usually what I say, and like if we're going to go by steps, but number 2 step in this process is to start to manipulate your meals to have a little bit more protein. So inching that up. No pressure that you're not doing that in week 1. No pressure that you're not doing that in week 2. No pressure that you like only get it one time in like 3 weeks. That's okay, because you're changing a lot. You're grocery shopping differently. You're cooking a little bit differently. New products are coming into your house. You are probably learning that some foods don't have protein that you thought they did. So at the base, macro tracking is nutrition education. It's something that we've never received in school. At no point in my schooling, like in like my grade school and high school time, did I actually get a list of like what contains protein, what contains fat, and what contains carbs. And if you have learned nutrition through the lens of a diet, then you absolutely have a very warped understanding of what foods have protein, fat, and carb, or what are good and what are bad for you. So yeah, I mean, I guess step 1, just to reiterate, is download an app. I would say MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, and Fat Secret are my top 3. I'm usually recommending Chronometer. And that is for several reasons, but mostly because it has a very vetted library from dietitians and food scientists. So it's very accurate data. And the app it's goal neutral. So it's like opening a bank account and like not having that, like a banker yell at you for not saving enough, or like MyFitnessPal alternatively sometimes can be very triggering for somebody because it'll be like, you're eating too much fat, or like you're eating too much sugar, and I just like, we don't need that narrative when we're just trying to learn.
Yep.
And so Chronometer is my number one recommended app that you would do that. And then you would find somewhere to get macros, and my website would be a great place to start for that. And you'll find out very quickly how up or down on any of your macros you are, and you're going to slowly start to change your behaviors and manipulate your meals in order to hit those targets by the end of the day. And then you're going to start to check in with yourself, like, how do I feel? Do I sleep better? Is my energy up? Likely yes. Like, are my workouts better? Likely yes. Is my weight trending, or my body composition trending in a way that I would expect? Likely yes. So yes, you go from there.
I would love to get into that too, because I love what you focus on. It's not calorie in, calorie out, and weight loss. It's a lot of other things about, you keep saying, how you want to feel. You want to sleep better, and it is going to do a lot of things to you if you sleep better in a positive way. And so can you kind of speak to metabolism, hormones, and kind of how this process helps you feel better and your body work more efficiently?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a very complicated question, but I would say there are two camps of people out there. We'll see the camps of people that, calories in, calories out is the only thing that matters. And then we have other camp of people that say hormones are the only thing that matters. And I would say that macro tracking, especially for strength training women, especially for active women, it's a marriage of both. You cannot ignore calories, but you absolutely cannot ignore that hormones are literally everything when it comes to women and body composition change, athletic performance, how you feel, how you look right now, and then just in the immediate future. Macro tracking forces you to make more balanced meals. We started this conversation talking about having a mix of protein, fat, and carb. And in order for you to stay on track with your macro goals and actually hit your targets by the end of the day, likely you're forming more filling and balanced meals. That in and of itself will help you balance your hormones. So from that arena, you're helping out this camp, this like hormone centered body composition change result from a hormone manipulation. But also when you're tracking protein, fat, and carb, you're also tracking calories. So you're not keeping an eye on your calories at all. It's doing the app is doing it for you. But should you set your macros in a way that's a slight deficit to lose weight or to lose body fat, yes, you're attacking both camps. Like we can't ignore the calories and we can't ignore the hormones. So it's kind of a marriage of both. Likely, we need to be eating more in order to have a better, faster, quicker metabolism. You need to be eating more. So macros are likely going to be making you eat more than what you realized. Very basic level. That's what we would say is like, how you would improve your metabolism with tracking macros.
Yeah. And it's such a struggle for people to hear that. It's like, wait, what? Back the train up. No, I need to eat less to weigh less. And it's all people focus on. It's really hard to shift people's mind on that. And as a coach, I feel like it's the most frustrating thing, because the answer to you feeling better a lot of times is eating more, but that's not how our brains are trained. So how do you get someone to that point? I know it's obviously a process, but how do you walk someone through that process of moving them from, no, I need to eat less. Nope. The only thing that's worked for me is to eat less.
Actually, I did this today on a coaching call. So I shared a picture of like what your metabolism looks like, and on paper, like the processes. It is so complicated. We like to boil it down in order for us to like understand it. Like we're just like, it must just be like ins and outs. And I don't know, like you put something in and something comes out. I don't know. Like it is so complicated. And every single step, we're talking hundreds of steps that happen on every single day, require micronutrients. You tell me how you're going to make your metabolism work better when you're eating less calories and eating less fuel in general, so not as many nutrients in general. It's going to slow everything down. So we say, maybe we can say it that way. That might shift somebody's understanding. But another way to think about it is, in order to have a higher metabolism, you need to influence a couple of things. And the biggest contributor to your calorie burn is how much muscle mass you have on your body. How are you going to build muscle if you're eating less and less and less and working out more and more and more, and maybe spending your time in cardio activities versus strength training activities? So a big part of my work is helping my clients audit their exercise routine to say, is it really aligned with your goals? Because you're now eating more. Great. Awesome. This is so great. But you're also just putting your energy into something that's not going to change your body composition in any way. So a lot of times we are changing that to be more strength focused so they can build muscle. Again, the more muscle you have on your frame, the leaner that you appear, the stronger that you feel like you appear. Muscle in and of itself a higher muscle mass to fat ratio is going to be better metabolically for you. It's going to prevent a lot of disease. A lot of the roots of many of our chronic diseases have to do with the fact that we are over fat and under muscled, if we want to call it like that, low lean muscle mass. So yeah, I mean, in order for you to improve your metabolism, by and large, you need to be eating more. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you want to be putting on some lean muscle mass. You need to support your metabolism with more vitamins and minerals. It's really hard to do all of that stuff if you're like on 1,200 calories and eating garbage.
More muscle equals better metabolism.
Yep.
And we lose muscle as we age. And I think a lot of people don't know that. They think about bone density, you know, because that's something I feel like they talk about in school as you grow up. You know, drink your milk, your bone density, you're going to get osteoporosis or whatever. But they don't talk about you lose your muscle mass. And it's hard to build muscle. It's a lot of effort. And I love that you're talking about that because dietitians don't talk about that. And I love it.
There's a lot of dietitians that are. I think it's like finding your corner of people. I just spent the weekend with like 7 amazing dietitians that are not doing the same work, but underlying our message is like, you got to eat more real food. And they might be doing it for a certain purpose, like whether it's gut healing or like hormone stuff or like fertility, me being mostly with active women, changing body composition, healthy aging, stuff like that. But by and large, the thread is eat more. Yeah.
So what are some common mistakes, practices that you're seeing women do in attempt to lose weight?
Well, drastically cut their calories, because I like to tell, like, if you think about maybe where you are, Andrea, like running like lights you up. And let's just say you had the misconception that in order to be a more competitive runner, you needed to be lighter. You needed to lose weight. So you're going to go to Google and you're going to say, what is the fastest way to lose weight? And it's going to be cut calories to 1,200. It's going to be cut carbs completely. It's
no
going to
thanks.
be, yeah. And what is that going to make you feel in your new sport that you absolutely love? It's going to make you feel like garbage. And then you're just going to like, maybe I'm just not trying hard enough. Maybe I just need to do it harder. That is a cycle that I see. So in my own life, it was CrossFit, and I found this sport where I could like thrive as a competitor. I like lost this piece of my personality when I left high school because there was no organized sports in my life. And I found this sport that was like, it doesn't matter what your body looks like. It's how much you can lift. There's no mirrors in the gym. Like you are equal to your male counterparts. And like, it was so awesome. But if I incorrectly thought that being lighter in that sport would be more competitive because I saw the elite at a very like lean body composition, and I what if I looked up their weight and they weighed less than me? I would incorrectly think that weight loss would make me more competitive in this new sport. And again, I might go to the internet and I might say, what is the best way to lose weight, the fastest way to lose weight? And I would be met with something super drastic and not going to feel my sport. So I like to say that I offer an alternative that's like you're using nutrition in a like it's goal neutral. Nutrition as a science is goal neutral. Unfortunately, you've learned about nutrition through the lens of a diet. And so you only think that when you're working on your nutrition, it's to lose weight. You're saying you're using your nutrition to try to figure out gut health issues and hormone issues. We can use nutrition to do whatever we want. So yes, the most common mistake that people make is that they drastically slash their calories or over exercise in order to achieve weight loss, which is, like we said before, not going to be great for your metabolism, likely tank your hormones and not make you show up for your sport that you love. And that's just going to be like a whole like mental health garbage that we have to deal with. So
yeah, it's a recipe for burnout, which is in today's day and age what we're all trying to avoid.
Yep. Yeah. And as a coach, you know, I get a lot of clients that are marathoners or elite athletes because they know that that's what I'm doing too. And they want to know exactly what I'm eating. And I always say, like, what I eat may not be what's going to work for you. Like, you might shit your pants if you eat what I eat before a run, because I've almost done that, trying to copy somebody else that I look up to. I'm like, Dean Karnazes, he like eats a slice of pizza. Like, you know what that would do? It would tear me up on a run with the dairy in it. So I tell people, I'm like, okay, you can try and do what I do. Do not do what I do on a race day to start.
No.
Attempt this on your own during your training. See how it makes you feel. It might not agree with you at all. And I think, you know, as a marathoner, avoiding shitting your pants is a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, I don't want to shit my pants, as neither do a lot of our listeners, probably all of them. So thinking of starting this approach and eating whatever you want and just tracking that, and not feeling well from eating whatever you want. So how do we get this transition to eating whatever we want and then incorporating more real whole foods? Like, how does that normally look for clients?
I think a lot of it happens on their own. Like I said, messy fumbling through it. If you can let go of the fact that like one day you're not tracking and the next day you're perfect at it, if you can just let that go, then we're going to have a good time. my personal experience is very much like that. So I was like, I heard about macro tracking. I was like, it was only in the bodybuilding community. It was like only like elite CrossFit. I was like, this is weird. Everyone's just having these epic cheat days and they're saying if it fits my macros. And I was like, this just does not feel healthy to me as a dietitian. So I'm like, I'm going to do it. So I downloaded my numbers. I threw it in my FitnessPal and I was like, well, it fits. So I had like banana bread for breakfast and I had like ice cream for a snack. And I was like, well, it's fine. Like it fits. Like, but by the end of the day, I was like way over on one thing and super under on another. And not only that, I was just like, I felt like trash. Like you're starting your day with banana bread, like starting your day with like straight up carbs and garbage that I wouldn't normally eat anyway. I was just like under the guise that it fit my macros. So had I just like stopped then and not tried again, like it would have been a pretty miserable story. But I was like, no, I'm going to keep the same framework that I normally do, which up until that point was eating pretty balanced, having some protein, having some fat, and having some carb. What I quickly learned, like I said, in like the early steps of trying to track your macros is starting to compare where the prescription says and where you are. And after a week or so, I could see, oh, wow, I'm like kind of carbophobic. Like I didn't think I was, but I was like holding back on rice and I was holding back on potatoes. And like, this is just natural stuff that you just think you're being good by like, removing the toast or like leaving the bun off. Like these are just things that in some circles that may really, really help you. But for somebody who's training and like putting some effort into their workouts, running, stuff like that, that isn't going to feel that good. But I was very much over my fat goals. I was like avocados and nut butters and trail mix. And I love fat. I was cooking with a lot of oils. So just by like across like maybe like say 4 weeks, I was like slowly dialing down the fats and slowly manipulating up the carbs. And like I said, fumbling action, like messy action here is just, you're getting more, like you go looking for a list of whole food carbs, or you, maybe you're just curious about like, well, how do I get my protein up? And you follow me or a couple other dietitians or do a quick Google search. And now your grocery list is full of ground turkey and like deli meat. And you're like thinking to yourself, what will my kids eat? So you're throwing something like that on your list. And it doesn't have to be so, you don't have to overhaul your entire diet in order to make this work. It's like you guys talk about all the time, like really small steps and small changes to manipulate your meals to be a little bit more balanced and get those targets where they need to be. And likely, if you give yourself 4 to 6 weeks, it's going to happen. And it's going to happen from whole real foods because it's a lot easier to add in, you know, like we were talking about that ground beef or like that, like ground turkey, or swapping regular bacon for turkey bacon, or a full fat cottage cheese for a fat-free cottage cheese, or like whatever swaps you want to make. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to try to fit something like Domino's pizza or like a, I don't know, like a frozen meal. It's not really super great, you know, super low protein, probably really high fat, or it's just making simple swaps at Chipotle. So instead of doing guac and sour cream, you're just doing guac, or instead of splitting the chips with one other person, it's splitting it with 4 other people. So a lot of times those habits kind of gently go together, but you know, if you need another nudge, you know, working with a coach, this is another plug for like working with a coach can help make you make those decisions, or help you make those decisions a lot more quickly and like give you suggestions.
Well, and I think a coach helps you see like nothing has to look perfect. It's like a good reminder to say like, you realize you're progressing. You realize you're trying something that's uncomfortable. You realize you're learning. There's so many things that I think coaches give you, you know, it's like we're a cheerleader, but also a reality check. Like, how do you feel when you're doing this? How's your body feeling? And I think it is a lot to shift and change when you know you need to do something about your diet. It's overwhelming to think about getting started. But I love what you're saying is fumble through it and it's okay. Like you're learning something, you're trying something new, which I think is super cool. And having a coach or even a friend to do it with or something, like you can bounce ideas off of each other and have accountability with it too.
And someone to give you grace. Because like you said, you are making a lot of changes. It is overwhelming. And so just to have someone be like, hey, take a step back, look at what you're all changing. How are you feeling? I think it's so easy to get caught up in it. And to have that time, like you're saying, that is needed to reflect and to ask yourself, how am I feeling? What changes have I noticed? It's hard to take a step back. And so to have someone to force you ultimately to take that step back is so important when you're doing something like this.
Yeah. I would say too, like a big part of the reason why people might quit in that 4 to 6 weeks in the first beginning is because they want to eat out. And they think that because they can't track perfectly, likely because they don't know exactly what's in the food, they're like, well, just screw this, like hit like table flip. But I like to teach people like, because you are tracking your food at home, now you have a much better understanding of what a proper portion size is of XYZ food. And so when you go to a restaurant, you can use that knowledge. This is all like tracking, neutral tracking, just for the sake of like learning what's in your food is super powerful. Every single time you do it, you're learning something. So like, don't underestimate the reps that you're getting in the couple of weeks that you're haphazardly doing it. And you're maybe only doing it 80%. Like you are setting yourself up for an opportunity when you're at a social gathering, at a barbecue, at like a restaurant where when you definitely don't know the ingredients, you do know what constitutes whole real food at that restaurant. You do know what it feels like to feel full and satisfied. You also know what it feels like to be overstuffed. So these are all things that even if you don't track the food, even if you are not getting the ingredients exactly right and you're staring at your plate and you're like, I don't even know how I would calculate this, you can fall back on like behaviors that you know and like feelings that you know are appropriate, like, you know, and stopping when you're 80% full and, you know, skipping an appetizer or the alcohol or dessert, not all three. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that can, like, you'll have just a better, more recalibrated understanding of how much food is appropriate for you and that you can take that in to almost every situation that you do. So I guess I just want to say, like, don't give up when the opportunity that will inevitably come when you cannot track something exact. Like, that's not what this is about. Perfection is not required for macro tracking.
Yeah.
I think that's too with anything behavior change related, right? You get so caught up in it and you're like, want this end goal, this end goal, this end goal. And it's hard to not be a perfectionist. But with anything, when you come at it with an approach of I'm learning, I'm growing, it's the journey, not the destination. Like there's always going to be something I'm learning. And then you can kind of see, okay, I'm learning how to listen to my body. I'm learning what it feels like to be full, what it feels like to be overstuffed. And so I think just to echo what you're saying is look at it as an opportunity to grow and learn and to just become more in tune with your body and yourself.
Yeah. And something that you keep saying about is satisfied and thinking of like portions, fullness, satisfaction with food. And I can't stop thinking about fat because fat is something that's controversial. And so much of what I get satisfied with food has to do with healthy fat. I need avocado on everything I eat. I'm obsessed with it. And so can we just have you touch on fat and just why it's important and simple ways to kind of incorporate that into your routine and how it's not going to make or break your weight gain or weight loss?
Well, especially if you're tracking, you absolutely have an eyeball on your fat macros and then your total calories. So yeah, I mean, it's not going to make or break your goals because especially if you are aiming for that macro or aiming for that target, it will be within line. So fill up on whatever you want, stack it in one meal, stack it in 2 meals. Like it doesn't matter how many meals you have in a day. It doesn't matter when you eat that fat. The total macros by the end of the day is what matters. I will say you will probably feel better if you spread those macros and spread that fat throughout your day and have 3 to 4 or 5 meals, whatever you decide, and it's in every single meal. So like you're saying, you like thrive on fat, maybe pre-run, you're not really emphasizing as much. I'm not sure. Again, it's what you figured out is the best recipe for you. But fat is absolutely important, especially for women, because it is what helps us make hormones. And from even the basics of blood sugar balance, we need fat to slow down the spike of blood sugar that happens when you eat carbohydrates. And so that gentle rise in blood sugar and that gentle fall is what we want all day long. The alternative being a very standardized American breakfast with cereal or like fat-free milk and like, sugar-laden snacks and foods and things like that. We have a roller coaster blood sugar. So the exact opposite, again, would be rolling hills. And that comes with having a balance of protein, fat, and carbs. And fat being one of the biggest like contributors there because it's very slow digesting. It keeps our food in our stomach a little longer, leading to fullness cues, and then empties into the small intestines at a slower rate, which means it's going to be a gentle rise in blood sugar and a gentle fall later. So again, we were looking for that versus like the roller coaster up and down, which is going to lead you to feel really anxious and energized and then crashing and hangry. And then like you're searching for that snack in that vending machine and you're like, like everything's great. And then I'm like, oh, everything's not great. Like alternatively just being like mellow, even keeled, like balanced all day long.
You just don't think that food affects your moods, but it absolutely does. It affects so many things when it comes to your day, and not just energy to go for a run, but like energy to function at your job and have an attention span.
So, you know, food and really tuning into my body has been something that is new to me over the last few years, and I haven't tracked my macros. So I'm curious, who is the ideal candidate to track their macros? Who do you think?
I'd say a lot of my ideal clients are the quintessential person that should be. So they're already eating healthy. They already have a pretty good understanding of like what foods are nutritious and what foods might not be. But they have a sneaking suspicion that they might not be eating enough because they like have wonky energy some days and they feel great others. Or they're like struggling with like, being hungry and like raiding the pantry, and other days they don't, or, it's just like all over the place and they want some regularity. Like you're talking about when you go on runs, you want it to be predictable. You want to know exactly like what's going to be happening. And from tracking macros and from eating enough consistently for several weeks and months and years, you can do that predictably. And so this might be the very first time that somebody has ever like, tracked their food, ever like eaten enough. And we're going to make that a more predictable experience. So usually the people I'm working with are the people that have a pretty good understanding of how, of what healthy is, or like the whole real foods, but not always, because we do some undoing there. But they're not seeing the results they think they should be for the amount of time that they are spending working out. So they're putting a lot of energy into their workouts and they're just like, I don't know, like
Something's not working.
Something's not working.
Yeah.
And rather than, and I'm so thankful that they do this, but rather than go to the internet and say, how to eat for X, or like how to lose weight, like they're seeking out a different opportunity here. So intuitive eating might not be that for them, because intuitive eating might make you feel not hungry, because your fullness cues are down regulated when you're under eating sometimes. So there's a piece here where sometimes eating more and improving your metabolism will reignite your hunger cues. So, I see a lot of this with women when we start eating more, they are excited when they wake up because their metabolism is kicking on and they are more hungry. And then we like raise their calories more and it happens again. And like, they're actually feeling powerful in the gym. They're recovering super well. And like, these kinds of things all spill onto each other. So I'd say a really great candidate is the person that's like, and now what? I'm like, I've mastered the basics. I really feel like I've mastered the basics, but like, I don't want to dip into diet culture. I don't want it to like be a weight focused end goal. I want to just like fuel for my passion activities, and I want to do it right. So I'd say that macro tracking is for that person.
So clearly you've had success with tracking macros and your clients. And so my brain goes to, is this something you have to do forever?
No, I'm so happy that you asked that. Usually the lifespan of a client with me at the end of our time together, we are, like we said, looking back at intuitive eating. We're saying, now that you've recalibrated how much food it takes to make you feel awesome, let's play with not tracking for a week, or let's take a couple days off every other week or something like that. And people are like, yeah, like they're like feeling a lot more confident. They know where to fill their bowl up on their cereal, or they know how much to serve themselves at dinner. They like can go to most of social situations and kind of eyeball it. And unless you had practice, you wouldn't really know how to do that. So the transition being, I usually tell people that you can dip in and out of this more like methodical approach when you have specific goals. So you find yourself feeling a little off. Maybe it's a time to go back to tracking for a week or two, or you're training for an event, like CrossFit or a triathlon or marathon or something like that. Maybe you go back to tracking for a few weeks because you want to make sure that you're fueled appropriately. Or maybe you're just curious about changing your body composition pretty extensively. So you need to manipulate your food. And this is simply a budgeting system to do that. It's like whenever, I like to say too, like you've been, like, even though you know how to drive a car without reading the manual, if the light goes off, you want to know what exactly to do. And macro tracking can be that. Similarly, like another analogy is like the budgeting system. So if you're saving for a car or trying to pay off your loans, you can't not be looking at your bank account. So if you're very focused on a goal right now, it's very helpful for you to be tracking your food and treating macros being your budget, like trying to figure out how to budget your food better. So yeah, I mean, I'd say specific goals, dip in and out. Some people are going to use it more diligently and frequently to help them eat enough. And other people are going to say, that was great to try on for a while, but I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back to it.
Yeah, it's almost like adding a tool to your toolkit. You have to master that tool or know how to use that tool first. And then it just becomes kind of that second nature. You can touch back in. I love that because I'm sure a lot of our listeners, as was I, of like, I got to do this forever. Like this sounds a little aggressive.
Well, and the alternative too being like, where do you go if like you saw success on keto and then you decided to go back to eating carbs and then you felt really good, or, you know, maybe some life happened or whatever and you gained some weight and you want to lose it. Do you go back to keto where you felt like more miserable, or like I just want to say like the alternative being, you know, eating anything that you want flexibly could be the alternative instead of jumping back onto a diet when your goal isn't necessarily to diet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
kind of like having a baseline to come back to fall back on it and to know exactly, okay, retouch in with yourself, get re-in-tuned with your body.
Yeah. And I think about the percentages. So sometimes I think with macros, you feel like there's buckets, there's percentages. It's very rigid. It's very strict. And following you, I've learned it's not like that at all, where you give lists and lists and lists of so many foods that are ideas that are like good heavy hitters for protein or good heavy hitters for each category. But like you said before, I just want to remind everybody that like everything is on the table here. Yeah. It does just fall in a category. Yeah. And my question is the percentages. Like, how does that fluctuate between someone that is a runner or someone that's not? Or is it mostly like if you're in this age bucket and gender, you get this percentage? Like, how do you determine what people's percentages are?
Well, as a dietitian and my dietitian team, when we set someone's macros, we're asking a lot of questions. Where you would find yourself online with just a simple calculator, they're just taking height, weight, your current weight, and your like future goal weight and like what you kind of do for activity. And that's that. And they spit out some numbers at you. And that might be a great place to start. But as like our dietitian team is asking you probably 20 questions in regards to like your food preferences. So you like fat, I would set your fat macros a little bit higher, but you also are a runner and you dip into your carb stores and your glycogen stores fairly regularly. So we need to make sure that you're eating enough carbs. Maybe you're a vegetarian or vegan, and you prefer to not have animal sources of protein. It doesn't mean you require less protein. It just means that we might set your carbohydrate goals a little bit higher because then you're going to accommodate plant-based sources of protein, which tend to be higher in carb. So a calculator, like a generic calculator online, will not tell you that, but a smart, clinically like proven like formula set by humans can. So it's not a sweeping. I unfortunately can't say this 30% for these kind of people and 40% for these kind of people. It really does come down to like fitting the macro prescription to you not fitting yourself to the macro prescription.
So for someone who is just getting started off with this, where do you recommend they go?
Well, I'm always going to plug myself because I really feel like we have developed a really great guide around this. So like I just said, you know, asking a lot of questions to make the macro prescription fit you. And so a great place to start would be emilyfieldrd.com, and then go poking around for our macros guide, which is free. Download it, several pages. You'll figure out your macros and you can just run off from there and you might be good. So for some people, that DIY macros guide might help them get started just fine. But for some other people, they might want a little bit more nudging with a coach, with a registered dietitian. So there's several other services that we have there too. We have a personalized macro calculation where I'll give you recommendations that are a little bit more, you know, customized and personalized to you. Like you said, like you're a runner, you want to make sure that this prescription is fit for you. Maybe you have PCOS, or maybe you have some gut health issues to work out. And that is absolutely going to be, your macro prescription will be manipulated to that. Past that, we do have group coaching and one-on-one coaching too. So as you can tell from this podcast, like I'm very much into the mindset work, into health behavior change work, and it's not as simple as it seems sometimes. And so it's totally okay if the numbers by themselves don't change your behavior. That's why working with a coach can be absolutely helpful for that too.
I can't talk enough about your Instagram because I'm obsessed with it and I learned so much on it. And I'm also obsessed with quotes, and a quote of yours that I saw one day, it was really powerful. And it was, your best weight is whatever weight you reach when you're living the healthiest life you actually enjoy living.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I just love for you to elaborate on that.
I just want people to graduate from using weight as a marker of health. It like can play a small part. Maybe a range of 5 pounds up and down can play a small part, but by and large, weight has nothing to do with your overall health. And if we're talking about being your most healthy, that probably means emotionally healthy, physically healthy, spiritually healthy, you know, healthy in work and passion and things like that. So if we're only boiling health down to body composition and body weight, you're going to probably live a pretty miserable life to achieve whatever that ideal is in your head. So yes, I think I lead with a weight neutral approach with most of my clients. And this is kind of where that quote is born, because it's not worth it to be striving for a weight that's ideal in your head when every other force in your body is saying, no, like this is not okay. Like we are miserable. We're not socializing. We are thinking about food all the time. We are skipping out on things that are like super important to us. We are not able to like show up to our workouts, our joyful movement in a way that feels good. So I think you can kind of deduce where this is going, but like that quote is kind of born out of the fact that health is so much bigger than just your weight, just your like physical body size.
I love that so much. And I'm just so thankful that your brain has done this, honestly, because it's rare and it's beautiful that you went through this schooling and you go through these trainings and you see all kinds of dietitians. Luckily, you funneled your way to ones that speak your language of there's got to be another way to do this. And I just think in any professional role that I just want to encourage people that you can find your own path in what you're doing. And our culture is so much about the scale, and I'm so tired of it. And I'm so sick of people, exactly what you're saying, that they're tying their health to this number and it's torturing them. It's making them miserable. I hate it. And I'm just so happy that you have an approach that is so different in that, yes, there's numbers, but yes, there's flexibility. And yes, it can help you with your metabolism. And yes, you'll feel awesome. And yes, you can be a kick-ass athlete. I just feel like it's magic.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Fangirling me. I love it.
I told you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We haven't talked about this topic, so it's so exciting for us to hear your approach and how being flexible and still counting fits in this approach of figuring out what feels best for you. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And for those who want to follow you and want help and want to take that next step with all these nuggets you provided, where can they find you?
I would say the front door to my business is Instagram. So you're going to go to Emily Field RD and follow me there. I'm always posting on stories and kind of nurturing this topic because it is a little bit complicated and it's probably really new for you. So if you like that, you like what you see there, you're also going to want to go to emilyfieldrd.com. Poke around there. I have a lot of free resources, a lot of low cost resources as well. So I'd say that both of those places are going to be your best friend if you really like this kind of stuff.
Perfect. And we'll link that in our blog. So go to goldivyhealthco.com/blog and you'll find it all there for you too. All right. Now it's time for our 3 gold stars.
Star number 1 is going to be to make your meals more balanced with some protein, fat, and carb, like starting today. I know you can do that like with breakfast tomorrow. You can do it with dinner. You can absolutely do it. Star number 2 would be to download a food tracking app. My favorite would be Chronometer, but second best would be MyFitnessPal, and just track your eats neutral. It's just information, nothing, don't change anything. And then step number 3 or star number 3, if you're a little bit more advanced, maybe you're going to track your food and aim for at least 100 grams of protein, because if you're an adult woman, and especially an active woman, you need at least 100 grams. And that would be a great baseline, great starting point. You're going to feel immediately better if you're just pushing for that one number.
All right, up next, Unleashing Ivy. Rapid fire questions. Are you ready? Okay. What's one thing you do that helps you feel prepared with food choices?
Cook once, eat all week cookbook. It's a meal prepping cook, or it's a cook once, eat all week book. I don't have to be cooking at night every single night. I usually do a bit of prep on Saturday and Sunday, and it is a game changer for the rest of my week. And that's my favorite cookbook.
Oh, I love that. Okay, we'll link that.
too.
And we'll go buy it after this. All right, next question. When you're really struggling with opinions in the nutrition world, what's one thing that steers you in a positive direction?
Thinking about my clients and thinking about how much magic and like everything that's changing in their life for the positive. And I always tell fellow business owners this as well. If one person gets helped by what you do and you're coaching, you're doing it well. You have a business. So don't focus on the logo. Don't focus on the website, anything like that. If you are helping someone make a better life for themselves and you have a business. So I think sinking my teeth into my clients doing really, really well is a really big game changer for me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Focusing on the positives.
Yes.
Love it.
All right. And last question. What's one thing you wish you would have known sooner?
I think one thing that has been a game changer for me this year, and that it's going to come bubbling up to the top, is like how much being around other people fills me up. And so being like physically separated from people because I moved this year, and also because of COVID and being socially distanced and trying to remain in the house, like it took a toll on my mental health. And it just reminded me that in-person relationships are so incredibly important for my personal health definition. So I have been so thankful that we're back in the gym and that I've been able to travel safely and meet up with people across the country. I will never underestimate the power of personal relationships ever again.
Amen. I think a lot of people are feeling that.
Definitely.
Totally. All right. Well, we like to leave our listeners with a piece of gold. So, Emily, this is a quote that speaks to you. If you have a quote that you'd like to leave our listeners with.
I find myself saying a lot. Stop overestimating what you can accomplish in 6 weeks and and don't underestimate what you can accomplish in 6 months. This applies to nutrition so much because people always want a quick fix. But when it comes to nutrition and tracking, doing it right is probably going to take a lot longer. So give yourself some time. Don't underestimate what you can accomplish in 6 weeks, and don't underestimate what you can accomplish in 6 months.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.